Good evening, everyone, and welcome to CMCI's first One College Colloquium of this academic year. My name is Andrew Calabrese, and I'm a professor in the Department of Media Studies and Associate Dean for Graduate Programs and Research in CMCI, the College of Media, Communication, and Information. We're here virtually at the first of several One College Colloquia that we're planning for this academic year. And with each of them, we plan to address significant questions of racial justice as they relate to the study of media, communication, and information. This evening's event is very special because it will highlight the work of Raylan Rabaka, professor of African, African American, and Caribbean Studies in CU Boulder's Department of Ethnic Studies, and the founding director of CU Boulder's newly established Center for African and African American Studies. This is an exciting moment for CU Boulder, and CMCI is honored to have the opportunity to hear Professor Rabaka tell us about his work and the thinking that has gone into the creation of the new center. It's also my pleasure to introduce Professor Nabil Ashaibi, my good friend and colleague in CMCI's Department of Media Studies, who is also Associate Director of CMCI's Center for the Media, Religion, and Culture. Nabil and Raylan recorded a brilliant conversation just for you this evening about Raylan's work and the inspiration for his founding of the new center. So this event is a combination of pre-recorded programming, and it will be interleaved with opportunities for live discussion with you folks, Raylan and Nabil. But before we get started, it's my pleasure to introduce CMCI's founding dean, Professor Lori Burgin. I also want to thank Dean Burgin for her financial and moral support for this colloquium and for her ongoing support of a great deal of other research and creative work that happens here in CMCI. Lori?
Thank you, Andrew, and hello, everyone. I appreciate the introduction, but I'm really delighted to just welcome you all today. I always think of CMCI as a community. It's really a community of humanities scholars and social scientists and artists and writers. And these One College Colloquia, and this one tonight, is one of our several ways that the college seeks to foster and support interdisciplinary conversations and engagement within the college and across the campus and really beyond the university as well. So we're super honored today to host Raylan Rabaka and Nabil, and to hear especially about Raylan's intellectual activism and the development of this new Center for African and African American Studies. So before we begin, I do just want to especially thank our tech team in CMCI for ensuring that all the details for this event would be a success. And I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. So let's proceed.
Thank you, Lori. And yeah, I would like to thank our tech team as well, Emily Johnson and Ben Peitzer. They did an excellent job with the recording that you're about to see. Just a quick note, the conversation you're about to view is divided into two segments of roughly equal length, about 30 minutes each. Following the first segment, we'll pause to have a 13-minute Q&A with all of you. And we'll do the same after the second segment with a second Q&A session. Now it's my pleasure to turn the mic over to my good friend and colleague, Nabil.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Dean Burgin, for organizing this colloquium. And thank you, Andrew, for giving me this idea, actually, to make this recording with Raylan, because we thought that we were going to just do the Zoom, but I think it turned out to be a fascinating conversation that beats the, a little bit the wooden structure of Zoom. So I would be remiss if I didn't thank our staff. So heartfelt thank yous for Melinda Miller, Steve Silva, Amanda McManus for their dedication to making this event a success. I am particularly grateful, and I'll, they have been thanked, but I need to thank them again. Grateful to Emily Johnson, our media production and technology manager, and Benjamin Peitzer, our broadcast technology specialist, for recording this conversation and for their really careful work editing the video. And this event would not be possible without them. So thank you to you both. Thank you also to everyone in attendance for sharing with us what I hope will be a beautiful and special moment in the company of one of our greatest and most generous colleagues on campus. Our conversation in this recording was just a pure delight. And we are excited to share it with you all tonight. So let me briefly introduce our guest. If you are familiar with Dr. Rayland Rabaka, then you have heard about his deep intellect, the significance of his work on Africana critical theory, and particularly his rich and careful study of the life and legacy of W.E. Du Bois, among many others. You would have heard also of his inspiring lectures and talks, his very popular courses on critical race theory, African and African-American social movements, decoloniality, civil rights music, hip hop, Black Lives Matter, etc. And as you will see today, you also will have heard of his generous spirit and his intellectual hospitality. As you heard, Dr. Rabaka is professor of African-American and Caribbean Studies in the Department of Ethnic Studies here on CU Boulder, and the founding director of the Center for African and African-American Studies at the university here on campus. He's also a research fellow in the College of Human Sciences at the University of South Africa. He has published 16 books and more than 75 scholarly articles, book chapters, and essays, including most recently, the Routledge Handbook of Pan-Africanism and Du Bois, A Critical Introduction, which just appeared. So congratulations, Dr. Rabaka. His accomplishments are many, and this introduction could be much longer, but I will let the conversation really you're about to see show us how wonderful and inspiring he can be. So please start the video. Rayland, it's wonderful to be here with you. Recording this conversation, I've wanted to do this for a long time.
Yeah,
so
we have wanted to do this for a long
time. So I'm glad that we finally found the time.
Thank you so much. Your graciousness and hospitality are legendary, and here from the whole world can see that I'm not making this stuff up. You really are very kind.
You know, in the words of that poet-singer Marvin Gaye, I'm starting with a music, you know. Here.
I appreciate
it's
it.
Like, yeah, because I have to start with music, right? You know, I wanted to ask you what's going on in that 1971 album of What's Going On. You know, he asked this question. You know, what's happening, brother?
Yeah.
You know, what's going on in the world?
Yeah.
And so it just seems like so much has happened in the world, right? And you know, old problems, but also new problems. You know, there are masks upon masks.
Mm-hmm.
There are old problems that are masquerading as new problems, right? And I just wanted to ask, you know, what's going on? Can you help us, you know, break it down a little bit?
Wow, I will try my very best. I believe that some of the old problems, as you say, have been amplified.
Yeah.
I believe that they have been intensified. Mm-hmm. And I think as a response to it, we as social scientists, we as professors at a very cushy institution like CU Boulder, have to amount our resources to respond. As social scientists, we are taught if there are social problems, we should develop social solutions, and we should collectively, we should be doing the kind of interdisciplinary dialogue that we're doing right now. Right. We need to be doing that on a wider national and international scale in terms of serious problems that remain, problems that have proved to be motive and malleable. They have transformed. But they're still with us. They might take a different form, but they're still with us. Yeah. I'm thinking about race and racism, particularly racism as one of those interlocking systems of oppression. I'm thinking about sexism. I'm thinking about patriarchy and the sort of new ways it's playing itself out with the new media in the world, right? I'm thinking about capitalism, particularly racial capitalism, the connections between the racialization of capital. I'm thinking about racial colonialism and the importance of acknowledging that colonialism is still very much a part of the 21st century. It saddens me to say that. I'm thinking about heterosexism. I'm thinking about this privileging, if you will, of straight folk over queer and trans folk, and how incredibly backwards and problematic and undemocratic. I'm also thinking about immigration, just a double standard when it comes to quote unquote immigration. If you immigrate from the South, and you're brown, you're not welcome. But if you immigrate from Europe or from Canada, you might, you know, they might welcome you with open arms. And so again, some of the problematics of the ways in which you have a racialization of seemingly almost everything in the United States of America, from politics to popular culture to psychology to communication and media. And so for me, I'm thinking about the centrality of race in this society and the ways that the pandemic has amplified America's, what Derek Bell calls the permanence of racism in this society. And so for me, this has been a period where I'm really sort of thinking practical dimension to the work. Mm-hmm. And that's, I suppose, why I'm here right now. You can clearly see that I'm literally trying to apply it. So this is sort of like applied ethnic studies, applied women and gender and sexuality studies, applied, right, decolonial studies. What happens when we move beyond simply thinking about it and start doing it, start putting it to play in the real world in which we live? You and I have talked about this, at length, yeah. But again, we're documenting some of the incredibly explosive intellectual conversations that we've been having.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's important to keep in mind this interplay between theory and practice, between sort of this process of thinking and also the process of doing things, right? Because ultimately the question is, what do we do about it? And our students are looking to us for that guidance and for that wisdom, hopefully. And we are also looking to them because it's not like we have all the questions, right?
Teach, sir.
The answers. We might know how to formulate the questions. We might not necessarily know all the answers. And they might actually help us get in, a handle at least on what those answers could be. In reality, on the field, on the ground, and it's very important at this particular juncture. That's why I'm asking this very question to start us off, is because I see that campuses now have such a vital role to play, but at the same time, the pandemic has made everything kind of retreat, go back into the background a little bit, and so we're still relearning our ways and sort of how to go back, but not to go back in the way we were.
Right. Right. Oh, I love that, to be perfectly honest with you, because I think that there are a lot of people who really are holding on to what was.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of Africana philosophy, we're grappling with what is the current reality. But if I can sound utopian for a moment, I love it when they talk about what ought to be, what could be. This whole notion of bringing a whole nother world into being, that is very much a part of my intellectual project, if you will, and I think that at the heart of that is also self-transformation is connected to social transformation. To poorly paraphrase Frantz Fanon in The Wretched of the Earth, Fanon talks about transforming ourselves in the process of transforming the world, and there's a dialectic there. And so too often in the academy, we have a bunch of academics who are sort of telling people what's wrong. And a lot of times they are what's wrong. I should say we are, but I'm not an academic. We're not academics per se. We are intellectuals, which means that our work has a life not simply on the campus, but also in the community. And in fact, we should be bridges from the campus to the community. That's at the heart of this thing called Africana studies, African American studies, African studies, Pan-African studies, is that we literally should be bridges. And that becomes very critical in North America, Nabil, because for 250 years, African Americans were not allowed to be educated. See, this is why the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass is so important. Douglass teaches himself to read and write. He self-educates. He steals the pages of the Bible, and he teaches himself. So self-education, even though, with all the PhD and all these letters behind my name, I am never not going to practice self-education. When I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, at the heart of that work is self-education, how he transformed himself, 7 years in the penitentiary, and he actually has something to show for it when he got out. I wish he hadn't had to go in there to get right, as we say. And so for me, the self-education part is, I see myself as sort of giving my students some tools. And what they build with those tools, I hope they don't destroy or tear anything down. I want them to build something up. What they do with those tools, that's their agency to do it with.
And you do it well, and we'll get to that point.
I appreciate you.
And we'll talk at length about that. So, I'm always reminded, Stuart Hall used to say, don't let theory let you off the hook. Right? Sort of in a world where people are dying in the street, right? Don't let your thinking become a refuge from the problems of the world. Get in there. make sure that you are also responding to the problem, that you are seeking solutions to the problem.
Absolutely.
And you're not just thinking about the problem, right? Sort of, again, this relationship, this very intimate connection between thinking and doing is really what I see also, the center doing. And we are here to talk about the importance of this exciting new addition to the campus. And congratulations on, the new Center of African American Studies. This is such a major accomplishment, obviously, for you personally, but also for all of us.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so we're here to talk about it. I want to hear a little bit about your vision for it. I want to hear about the community that made it possible. But I also want to make sure that I give, the people who are watching us tonight, I want to give them a sense of also who you are. Because there is, I think, a journey to that. There is a journey of the scholar. There's a journey of the musician. There's a journey of the human.
Yes.
There is a journey of the educator, of the activist, of the intellectual, all of these things put together. I want to understand and give our audience here a proper context for how the center actually became a reality, but also how you build that staircase for all of us to get there with you. Think about, for example, the work that you do, right? And I have read quite a bit of it over the years, just because it has been really very, I would say, formative for me, just thinking through the questions that you ask, through the people, mostly the thinkers that you try to rehabilitate into critical theory, people who have been forgotten, W.E. Du Bois, who doesn't figure as in the canon of sociology, and you're asking the question, why? But it's not because you want to racialize his thought, because you want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that there are all these thinkers, and they have defined not just Black theory, but just theory, critical theory, period, right? And so the question becomes, how important is that journey for you, right? Sort of to begin with someone who has so much thought about the world for so many years, right? And that you decide that you want to become, and this is how I see you, really, as a troubadour, if you want, a storyteller of theory, of popular culture, of the Black struggle through these figures, W.E. Du Bois, obviously you have Fanon, you have Cabral, you have all these people that you decided, okay, someone needs to write about these things. Not that you are the only one, but you are also bringing that story for people to see and to also ask the question, why is it that I have not heard about these people? You say this beautifully, you say, there are students of sociology who will go through an entire curriculum and they will not have ever read one page or one word from W.E. Du Bois. Why is that?
I appreciate the question. I appreciate the intellectual sincerity and the radical honesty of the question. I'm very humbled that you, a scholar of your caliber, engages my work, and so I just want to say thank you, Chakrin. Thank you so much. I would say to you that part of my project is about making the most of the margins, about bringing folks from the, this is a major concept in terms of feminist theories, and you can see where I'm at, I'm very open to, but when Bell Hooks in her book, Feminist Theory, 1983, talks about feminist theory from margin to center, too often we have had some of the same folks, generation after generation, at the center, and so the question becomes, wait, if you have critical theory, what about the contributions coming out of the African world? And you can clearly see what I've done. I'm a professor of African American, and Caribbean thought. So I chose what folks I understand to be some of the most iconic intellectuals from each of those areas. So that would be Du Bois, Fanon, Amilcar Cabral. And these are all sort of radical revolutionary thinkers. I've also tried to pick thinkers who were intersectional in their own ways, and embryonic intersectional. So they're not going to be intersectional like the Combahee River Collective, who in 1977 articulated identity politics. They're not going to be intersectional in the way that Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989 drops the more full-bodied, brilliant, conception of intersectionality. This is an embryonic, so it's a prefigurative, formative, inchoate form of intersectionality. And so with these figures, it's very important for me to ask who is left out of the curriculum. This is what I teach my students. This is what they should be asking in any class that they're taking. Why is it that certain people make it onto the curriculum and some folks that are left out. And I'm a kind of
Yeah.
scholar. I'm more interested in who gets left out. Why isn't Angela Davis
Yes.
being taught in these philosophy classes? I mean, something is very wrong. What about Samir Amin? Why isn't
Yes.
Samir Amin being taught in political science and political and economics on this campus? Something is wrong with, I mean, an iconic
Yeah,
figure.
exactly.
Like, I mean, and so for me, I'm really interested in folks that have been marginalized. They have been rendered invisible. I'm nodding to Ralph Ellison, The Invisible Man,
Yeah.
1952. They have been erased for whatever reason. Du Bois's project is about the ways in which our people, African people, have been either denied or discarded in history, right? Certainly in the histories of various academic disciplines, the development of these disciplines. And so what I did was develop this concept of epistemic apartheid
Yes.
to speak to that. And so in a nutshell, epistemic apartheid is about how the social segregation, so the segregation of our society, has been smuggled into the academy. So the social segregation, racial segregation of the society has become intellectual segregation in the academy. That some people, when we talk about epistemic apartheid, it's an intersectional concept. So it's not simply intellectual segregation based on race. It's also how
Yeah.
many patriarchal academics
Right.
refuse to learn anything from the knowledge that girls and women produce.
Yes.
It is about a lot of the straight, heterosexual intellectuals, how they're not open to, epistemically open to the knowledge coming from queer and trans lives and struggles. It's
Right.
about the bourgeois intellectuals
Yeah.
who denigrate,
Yeah.
intellectuals who may be committed to socialism, who may be committed to communism or Marxism or any kind of alternative economic thought. It's about the folks who may privilege the Judeo-Christian idea over all other faiths. And you can see, it's not a secret to you that I'm very influenced by Howard Thurman.
Right.
Howard Thurman, one of my spiritual mentors. Howard Thurman, one of my idols, because Howard Thurman created the first interfaith and interdenominational church in the United States of America. Maybe you didn't hear me, brother. I
Yeah.
said Howard Thurman created an interfaith. That means he had
Right.
Muslims there.
Yeah.
He had the Buddhists there.
Right.
He had the Hindus there. He had the Christian, the Jews,
Yes.
all in one. He had a lot of different faiths, right?
Mhm.
That's what the Center for African and African American Studies, that's what I'm doing. I
Yeah.
took a page straight from Howard Thurman. And do you want me to tell you, Brother Nabil,
Yeah.
who Howard Thurman's most famous student is?
No. Who is
His name is the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther
Luther
King.
King.
Most people don't realize that. So the student,
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, this is also what gives me a passion as a professor when I see the way that part of my job is to inspire the next generation of students and scholars to transform themselves and to transform the world and to let them know that what we do is worthwhile. I get a special joy out of teaching here at CU Boulder.
Yeah.
I get a special joy out of teaching and sharing knowledge. And can I tell you, Nabil, how much my students have taught me about hip hop culture over the last 16,
Oh,
17
yes.
years?
Yes.
They have schooled me,
Of
brother.
course.
I mean, they have given me so many
the same
mixtapes
here.
and showed me the videos and everything else. And then can I also say more recently, teaching the Black Lives Matter movement class for the last 5 years,
Yeah.
how much my students have taught me the meaning of this movement in real time. So this is not my
Right.
course in the civil rights movement. This
Yeah.
is not my course in the
Yeah,
Harlem
I
Renaissance.
wanted to ask you about that. It's good that you were anticipating some of my questions.
Sorry
just
about
because-
that,
No,
bro.
that's fine. That's
We
fine.
always-
No, that's wonderful. That means that our conversation is going in the right direction, at least from my perspective. Hopefully, it's from yours as well.
Absolutely.
Talk to me about the class on Black Lives Matter, because I see a connection here between sort of trying to rehabilitate these intellectuals, right, and try to wrestle them out of this epistemic apartheid. But this is there is a loss in that in not knowing that intellectual tradition that is epistemic. The Black Lives Matter. It's when loss becomes real. It's when it's physical.
Yes.
So why did you decide to teach a class on this campus on Black Lives Matter?
Because I feel that at CU Boulder, a lot of non-white scholars, particularly Black, African American, Caribbean scholars, we're in the colored section. If you think about that metaphor, if you
Yes.
think about the experience of my ancestors in this country, all these signs, white and colored, there is an intellectual colored section, right? And that's where you put all the funny folks. You put
Yeah.
everybody that don't fit that particular ideal,
Right.
you put them all in that particular section. And this class grew out of my commitment to the movement. I mean, in case somebody in Boulder doesn't realize, I've been actively involved in this movement since 2013.
Yeah.
And my students, I would go out, Nabil, I'm telling you, I would go out into the community and be a part of a rally or be a part of a protest or a march. And my students would see me out there and say, Dr. Bacher, how come you ain't teaching this in the class? Woo, 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 woo. And so I think that there was a quote unquote popular demand.
Yeah.
This is where my intellectualism and my activism actually collided. And I wanted to place them in alignment. So the class was really me. The Black Lives Matter movement class is like a showcase, an open house for the culmination of my own intellectual and activist. I see myself as an intellectual activist. I'm not an academic. And so to be an intellectual activist means, though, that it is important to model what it means to be a community activist to my students. Now, again, some of them would just hear that I'm gonna rock a rally because, I got to do it. And they would just show up and they were saying, well, we want an ethnic studies education that's relevant and real and about the movement, our movement.
Yeah.
You teach us about the civil rights movement. You're teaching us about the women's liberation movement. You're teaching us about the gay and lesbian liberation movement. So how come you won't teach us about our movement? And I'm a specialist, as you know, in Black protest movements.
Yeah.
So it was logical. It made a lot of sense. Initially, I was concerned about the curriculum, because the movement was happening in real time. How do you get enough scholarly sources to pass the curriculum committee, right? To be able to say, this is academic enough to teach it. And then there was the floodgates open, and there were so many memoirs. There were so many herstories. There were so many contributions to Black queer studies and Black trans studies coming out of BLM-themed works that showed, Nabil, that this movement, Black Lives Matter movement, arguably is the first authentically intersectional protest movement in the history of the United States of America, right? We're the founders, as you know, Alicia Garza, Patrice Concolors, Opal Tometi. Two of the founders I openly identified as Black queer radical feminists. So at the heart of this thing called BLM is Black feminism, Black queer studies, right? We've never seen that before. We've never seen Black feminism and Black queer lives and struggles hardwired into the origins and the evolution of a Black popular movement. See, this ain't your grandmother's civil rights movement. This ain't your parents' Black power movement. This is something wholly different. And then, if you think about the ways they're using social media, cyber politics, internet activism, see, that's what makes it distinct, even from the movements of the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s. Martin Luther King Jr. ain't tweeting. But Alicia Garza's tweeting. Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer, Septima Clark, they're not posting stuff on Facebook. See, they didn't do that. There's something, so the digital revolution now is linked to the social and the political revolution. And you and I both know, African people and a lot of oppressed people have ways in which they can remix technology coming from the empire. They will use the empire. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Improvisation, jazz.
There you go. I was going to say the empire strikes back. But absolutely. So the whole notion, and then that most of these leaders of BLM, much like myself, are members of the hip hop generation, those of us born after 1963, the 1963 March on Washington. So at the heart of the hip hop aesthetic is the remix. We are so cool remixing our parents' music. What if with the movement, BLM, we're actually remixing our parents' and grandparents' politics? A lot of people ain't getting that. It is, and the fact that BLM is about so much more than police brutality. It's about so much more than mass incarceration. Those are central, but it's also about the policing of gender and sexuality in the Black community by Black folk sometimes. So it's not just, right? It's also about interfaith. It's about the fact that not all Black folk are Christians, you see? It's also about Black immigrants. It's about Black folk with disabilities. It's about Black bilingualism and Black trilingualism. I speak half a dozen languages.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
again, this whole monolingualism
Yeah.
thing that goes on in America, speak English or get out of our country
Yeah.
kind of a thing. It's also about a critique of environmental racism.
Mhm.
Disproportionately, the majority of African Americans live in some of the most polluted
Right.
zip codes in the United States of America.
Mhm.
The majority of the Mexican Americans,
yeah.
the Americans of
Yeah.
Latinx people,
Yeah.
and so on and so indigenous folk. Please don't make me start talking
Mhm.
about the reservations,
Right.
right? And so again, there's a sense in which BLM is also a solidarity movement that if we want people to really commit to Black Lives Mattering, we got to commit to Indigenous lives mattering.
Yeah.
We got to commit to Latinx lives mattering,
Mhm.
Asian and
Yeah.
Asian American lives mattering,
Mhm.
right? There's a full range, queer lives
Yeah.
mattering, right?
Yeah.
Muslim lives. Let's say it in the
Yeah.
post 9/11 world,
Yeah.
right? What can we do to combat
Mhm.
Islamophobia
Mhm.
as we combat queer
Mhm.
phobia, transphobia,
Mhm.
right? What about all the issues surrounding ability and disability?
Mhm.
I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like, that
Yeah,
for me,
yeah.
the movement, if you just listen to Fox News,
Yeah.
or if you're just listening to Don Lemon on CNN or
Yeah.
something, shout out to Don Lemon and them, but I'm saying, anyway, I'm
He
just
has
saying,
his
though.
limits, yeah.
I'm just saying, the media
Yeah.
critique, this is your area of
Right.
expertise.
Yeah.
Rescue me
Yeah.
if I'm wrong,
No, you're
Nabil.
not.
But all I'm
No.
saying is that the students said they knew that they were getting a bunch of misinformation about the movement.
Mhm.
If you're just checking for the media, they want it critical. I
Right.
believe they
Yeah.
understand, they're humble
Right.
professor, geeky as I am,
Mhm.
to be somebody that was going to give them an honest assessment
Mhm.
of this movement, its strengths and its weaknesses.
Mhm.
And one of the things I love about the movement and about this generation of students I'm teaching
Yeah.
right now,
Yeah.
their ability to talk about their mental health and wellness. Do you know there's a national director
Yes.
for mental health and wellness
Mhm.
in BLM?
Yeah.
That most of the chapters, we have access to therapists. Like, and Black folk don't be talking about no
That's
therapy,
right.
right? You're just supposed to suffer,
Yeah.
and just try to
Yeah.
work it out at night,
Yeah.
put the pillow over your head
That's right.
and work it out. And so for
Yeah.
me, part of the cause, the Center for African and African American Studies at CU, we will have a mental health and wellness program.
That's wonderful.
We're going to partner with the Renee Crown
Mhm.
Mental Health and Wellness Institute, and we will have a collaborative initiative where we can get some of the students
Mhm.
therapy to
Yeah.
talk about. I mean, we experience, I myself,
That's-
you
yeah,
know that
that's
this center
important.
grew out
Absolutely.
of a lot of the racial trauma I have experienced on this campus
Yeah.
over the last 16 years.
Mhm.
And so part of this, creating this center and building community, it's therapeutic.
Yeah.
This is a healing.
Yes.
There's been a deep wound. There's been a deep hurt. We have felt marginalized on this campus. See, this is where I'm bringing the theory home.
Yeah.
We have felt marginalized. We have felt like there's been a colored section created for us that we've been quarantined to
Yeah.
for too long.
Mhm.
And so this center is really about a kind of open house. And I wouldn't be me
Yeah.
if I didn't also acknowledge that I'm a specialist in critical white studies.
Yeah.
I'm trying to help white folk develop a level of self-reflexivity to realize that they are not raceless, that they
Yes.
are not race neutral, that
Yes.
their race isn't universal. It may be ubiquitous. It may be so pervasive and so prevalent that they don't even realize that it's all around us. We will have special programs for white allies so that they can become anti-racist, so that they can be introduced. I meet people in Boulder, Colorado every day who would commit to anti-racism if they just knew where to start.
That's right.
See, that's
That's
the
right.
revolutionary humanist in me.
That's right.
That's the radical humanist in me
That's right.
that says they too realize that they are out of touch with their humanity.
Yes.
They too realize that because we live in a world that seeks to dehumanize
Mhm.
non-white people, women and girls, queer and trans people, poor people and underclass people, people with different abilities, non-Christian folk in the United States of
Right.
America,
Right.
they too are out of touch with their humanity. And so now as a social scientist, Nabil, I've identified layers and lots of levels of dehumanization.
Yes.
My new center could also be called the Center for Rehumanization. See, I'm trying to rehumanize.
Yes.
people. I'm trying to rescue and reclaim your humanity. I'm
Absolutely.
trying to help us achieve a real multiracial, multicultural democracy. And I mean right here, right. I ain't gonna wait. I ain't waiting no longer. You can go, you can run tell anybody. I ain't waiting.
This is very Césaire of you.
You better stop. One of my hugest influences, right?
This is very much like, the problem is not, don't think that we are the problem. The problem is also you. And we are in this together.
Thank
right?
you.
So the question of rehumanizing everyone,
Absolutely.
not just one part of the population, or that one part of the population is in need of that as opposed to another. I think that that's important to remind people of,
Absolutely.
right? Particularly people whose heart is in the right place and want to help and want to.
We welcome them.
Yes,
Nabil.
that's
I want them to
wonderful
know
hear.
they will get a warm welcome. So long as when you come to African America, though,
Yeah.
you must do as African Americans. Did you see how sweet spirited you was? But you started the interview. I've never seen this.
Yeah.
Or, I have seen it, but I've never seen this like in somebody somewhere else. Where you started the interview by asking about me, how you doing, how's your family. Like, that's the culture
That's
that
the
we want to
culture.
share with them.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We're ready for some Q&A, and we have some good questions for you, Raylan. But I'm going to take, I don't want you to feel like you have to spend a lot of time on it, but I want to take advantage of an opportunity to ask you if you could just say a little bit about your musical career.
Wow, I don't get a chance to do this very much anymore. Nabil, Andrew has messed up. I could do this all day. Listen, I'm going to try to take the instructions. I know my students are watching, so I'm going to try to follow the instructions. Listen, I have a BFA in jazz studies. I grew up as a youth minister of music. So my first musical love affair was with gospel music. So I started out in the church, and that just opened up. So I start out with sacred music, and I want you to the power of sacred music. I listen to religious and spiritual music from all over the world. Andrew, I listen to it every day of my life. So it's the sanctity. Now you might think it's odd, well, how do I end up teaching hip hop, which seems to be so secular? But again, I think that my life, much like Du Bois's life and Angela Davis and Ida B. Wells and them, I think that my life is probably full of some contradictions. So here I am. I have this love affair with Black sacred music, but also Black popular culture, Black popular music, which some people only conceive of it as incredibly secular.
I know that there's a lot more we could ask you about this, but I don't want to steal from the time from our audience. So I'll go ahead and relay the first question. Dr. Rabaka, it is a pleasure to listen to your conversation with Dr. Eshaibi. I have a question regarding epistemic apartheid and its relation to being an intellectual activist. How do you reconcile the two within the neoliberal academy as scholars doing this transformational work are continually marginalized?
Let me begin by saying thank you for the question. The question challenges me, and I would like to answer in all radical honesty. Part of the reason Dr. Eshaibi and I got together to have this conversation grew out of our marginalization, our feelings of cultural alienation and cultural isolation on this campus. And what I would say to try to give some hope is that I think that there's always going to be radical political pockets. That's the concept that we're coming with out of the movement. So if I wake up in the morning and I think that imperialism is invincible, I'm not going to be motivated to do what I need to do to overcome. And I just want to remind you, biophysically, genetically even, my DNA, I share that with Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass. And they brought into being a whole new world. And so I would just say, I would like to echo what we talked about, Nabil and I, in the interview, that it's very important for us to identify alternative models beyond those that are provided by the canon and the established curriculum. And I think that for me, it's important to have multiple models. And I have to end by saying, by that, I mean, Black feminist models, radical feminist models, queer models, right? Particularly Black queer models, Black trans models,
immigrant models. I know that all of my models do not come from the United States of America. All of my models do not come from Africa. All of my models don't look like me, talk like me, walk like me. I think that's the radical humanist in me, is that it's really important to have multiple models. And what I like so much about this conversation is that perhaps some of my students and even my colleagues can see precisely and exactly what I mean by transdisciplinarity. I'm in the College of Arts and Sciences. Now, Bill and I are not supposed to be as intellectually intimate and close as we are, because they keep us, I'm gonna talk about it, they keep us so siloed off from each other. But see, I'm an anti-apartheidist. See, I'm against any form of apartheid. And so I'm trying to break down the barriers of epistemic apartheid here at CU Boulder. And in that sense, I'm channeling Nelson Rockefeller Mandela, Nelson Mandela, anti-apartheidism. I just dropped the mic.
Thank you. Next question. I'm keen to hear what particular challenges Raylan might see working at CU, given its dominant white history and student, faculty, and administrative constituency. How do you work to mitigate those challenges?
Another great question. If y'all keep on, I'm gonna need some serious therapy after this is done. Because I think that I don't want to re-traumatize myself. Let me say, and Nabil knows this all too well, part of this grows out of, part of this center, the Center for African and African American Studies, grows out of my experience of racial trauma on the Boulder campus. I've experienced more racial microaggressions on the CU Boulder campus than I have growing up in the South, living on both coasts, both the East Coast and the West Coast, traveling all throughout Europe. I've experienced more racial microaggressions. And so what I've tried to do is to take that hurt and turn it into a healing. I've also, so that's really important for me to sort of emphasize that the experience of that marginalization, I just took a page right out of Bell Hooks's book in Feminist Theory, From Margin to Center, where again, I realized though that it is important for me to knuckle and brawl my way out of the margin and sort of bring not simply myself, but Africa and African people, the African diaspora, bring that to the center. And so, Andrew, part of it is that CU Boulder's been around since 1876. They have research centers and cultural centers for everybody but the second largest human group on the face of the earth, 2.3 billion African people. That's not a modern university. That's a university, Nabil. That university is stuck back in the apartheid era or something. So what I'm trying to do, instead of merely criticizing CU Boulder, I'm trying to help it update and upgrade itself and bring itself into the 21st century.
Thank you. I know that we could have for each question you're getting, I think we could have a much longer discussion, but thank you for that answer. Okay, next one. I genuinely appreciate Dr. Rabaka's emphasis on intersectionality in the Black Lives Movement. I'm wondering if he has seen Dave Chappelle's new Netflix special, The Closer, and what his thoughts are on it. I watched it the day it came out and loved it. Thought he offered the transgender community an olive branch with a heartbreaking tribute to a trans man friend. I've been genuinely surprised at the furor some of the LGBTQ community have made and the demands for an apology. I don't know if you're aware of it, of that show. I assume you are. Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
Absolutely and utterly. And in solidarity, again, I have so many friends and family in various queer and trans communities around this nation and around the world. And again, there is no consensus, just like there's no consensus amongst African folks, among Black people on everything. There is no consensus, but I can say that there were many who wanted to girlcott, y'all might say boycott, and to protest some of what they, what they understood to be offensive and queerphobic and transphobic. And so in solidarity with them, I have refrained. So we were going to refrain from sort of watching it up to a certain extent. But again, I have heard so much about it, the furor over, and I'm glad that you all are keeping up with Black popular culture. This is obviously one of my areas, but it is something that is certainly on the list, but I would like to watch it in the context of my queer and trans community.
Okay, here's another question. We have more questions than you're going to be able to respond to in the time that's left, I'm afraid. But that's a good thing. Some of these can be we can relay them at the end of the second segment. We're all okay. Next question. We're all sitting. If we're all sitting together in 1 year, what do you want to be saying about the CAAS and what it's accomplished in its first year?
Wow. I would love to be able to say that we literally built Black community on the Boulder campus. Boulder, CU Boulder, has a reputation as being one of the widest universities in the United States of America, or if on the face of the earth. So if there was a way that we could literally stop talking about it and roll up our sleeves and get down to the business of actually building community and the community, the cause. What we do with the new center, which again, the acronym is the CAAS, so we say the cause. So the cause would literally be a bridge from the campus to the community, because again, CU Boulder could do a lot better job in terms of its outreach to various communities, particularly Black folk in Boulder County and in the Denver metropolitan area. I'm trying to help. So not just identifying a problem, but also offering up a solution, as my idol, intellectual idol, W.E.B. Du Bois was famous for. And so for me, that's what I would like to say a year from now. I would also like to say that we have built arguably one of the most inclusive, one of the most beloved communities on the Boulder campus. That's a community where everybody is accepted, right? And the price of admission to coming to the Center for African and African American Studies is that everybody that walks through that door needs to recognize that they have a special contribution to make to the cause. That's the price of admission. As long as everybody, now Bill, I'm gonna shout you out again. You've made a special contribution to the cause. And if everybody could see, well, what is it that you have expertise in? Because I honestly believe that we all are gifted and we all are talented. What if all of us could take whatever it is that we do and figure out what special contribution can I make to this center, so we can move beyond polite platitudes and actually start the business of building community. We've been waiting on this since 1876, and we are a part of a generation of faculty, of staff, of students. We have transformed CU Boulder.
Okay, I think we have at least time for one more question here. Could you speak more into the importance of Black linguistic justice? I have been teaching about the importance of this lately and find that some grad students are having a hard time grasping why it is so important and how we can honor our students' cultural linguistic practices without, paraphrasing them here, jeopardizing their ability to successful community in a world that actually demands quote unquote standard formal English.
I really, really appreciate this. I want to go back to my graduate training. In order to achieve the PhD in Africology and African and African American Studies, we had to have proficiency in an African language. So not just a European language, which is fairly standard. You know, they'll say a language, you know, other than English, but they wanted to make sure that we were not simply our research languages. If you're an African American Studies, some of your research languages are going to be African, right? Languages, other African diasporian languages. And so for me, multilingualism is something that is incredibly important. And let me say another thing, and this is something I get from my colleagues in Native American and Indigenous studies. There are entire beautiful philosophical, spiritual, social, political, legal, social justice concepts that are in Indigenous languages. And if we cease to speak those languages, we're going to lose a lot of human knowledge. Part of this, I go back to Frantz Fanon, the first chapter of Black Skin, White Mask, his 1952 classic, which is called the Black in Language. And he talks about how that's one of the first things, one of the first steps of colonization after they get through physically subjugating you, physically suppressing and brutalizing you and enslaving you, is to rob you of your language. Why? Because language is one of the great carriers of culture. This is why I'm so excited to be delivering this, to be having this dialogue with communication, right? Media and all of this. Language as a carrier of culture. And if you colonize people's languages, you colonize their culture. You suppress their culture. And let's go to Patricia Hill Collins when she talks about subjugated knowledge, right? So if you can go to Michel Foucault and you can go to Patricia Hill Collins, but this whole notion of subjugated knowledge, imagine all of the knowledge that we are losing because languages are dying. Everybody has to speak French or Spanish or English. All these are European colonial languages. I'm sorry to tell the truth. I know they're gonna get mad. But the reality of the matter is these are European colonial languages. Now, having said all of that, I want y'all to hear the words that are coming out of my mouth. See, I'm speaking the English. This is African-American vernacular English I'm speaking. So we flipped the script. I'm not speaking the Queen's English. You know, I don't speak it the way they speak it. And I don't have to. This is some Ebonics. This is African-American vernacular English. And in fact, since I'm a professor, let me teach a little bit before y'all start the second part. Brother Andrew, there's a famous essay by James Baldwin on Black English. Are y'all teaching that in communication studies? You see what I'm saying? Now, Bill, don't get mad at me. What about Geneva Smitherman? Talking and testifying. Dr. G, as we say. I grew up reading my work in terms of rhetoric, my work in terms of comm studies, in terms of media studies, what's up, to Stuart Hall and them. But I really took Geneva Smitherman very seriously when she started talking about the ways in which modern contemporary African-American English is rooted in the language that grew out of our enslavement. And that there's some knowledge that has been handed down to me from Harriet Tubman, from a Frederick Douglass, from a Martin Delany, from Sojourner Truth, right? That other people, they're not going to be able to sort of really understand it. And in fact, they don't even think it's important to know that. And I think that is incredibly important. So shout out to all of my African-American communication scholars. What's up, Dr. Danielle Hodge over there in communication studies, right? But I think it's very important that CU Boulder here, we have robust African-American communication studies curriculum. And some of y'all know that this is one of my advisees. So again, here's that link up between ANS and CMCI that we have been doing, but we got to move forward with this thing though. But the linguistics of it, languages are dying. But again, most of the languages that are so-called going extinct, they are languages from people that have been racially colonized. And so I end by talking about this incredibly brilliant concept of the global South. The global South. I'm a product, with the father, and the mother, again, I've got these roots in the African diaspora, but the global South, how can we link up and create a certain kind of solidarity so that we can transform economically, environmentally, spiritually, linguistically, with respect to these gender binaries? They've also colonized our conceptions of gender and sexuality. I could do this all day, but I know you want to get to the second part. So I'm a hush right now.
It's not a matter of wanting. It's we want to make sure that people get a chance to hear the rest. I really like this format, and I got to credit Nabil for coming up with it.
Shout out to Dr. E. Shout out to Dr. E.
Having a Q&A break in the middle was a great idea. All right, back to part two.
I love the fact that, this is a center that is founded by you, but also students.
Yes.
And the students,
yes.
I checked their profile just to see who they are. Brilliant. I mean, how is it that we don't know these students on our campus? I mean, these are students who have operated at some of the highest levels of activism and the social struggle, and they bring so much wealth. And the fact that you have been able to, just garner all of that energy and then put it into this center is nothing short of phenomenal. This is wonderful. So talk to me about that process of talking with the students. You talked about how the class of Black Lives Matter was, the students kind of compelled you to do this.
Absolutely.
And how was that relationship with the students, you know, and how did it lead to the center?
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
As you know, one of the core concepts of BLM, the Black Lives
Yeah.
Matter movement, is say her name.
Yes.
And because there's a tendency to talk about Trayvon Martin,
Right.
Michael Brown, Freddie Gray, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, but when it comes to Breonna Taylor, when it comes to Sandra Bland, when it comes to Raika Boyd, when it comes to Tanisha Anderson, I can do this all day.
Right,
now.
right.
Most people don't know the women that have experienced police brutality or police murder. They don't say their names. I want to say these students' names, if that's okay. I want to get them on tape.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
we have Korea White,
Yeah.
fabulous, incredible student. We have Audrea Fryer.
Yeah.
We have Ruth Walden Michael, and we have Isaiah Chavez. These students are sources of inspiration for me. I have wanted to create this center at the University of Colorado Boulder since 2005, when I got here on July 27, 2005. And these students were toddlers, obviously. And I have been behind the scenes campaigning for this for 15 years. And the class gave me a forum to really raise the students' consciousness, but also to encourage them to take what I'm sharing with them and apply it.
The teaching, the learning, and the doing.
Yes, apply it to themselves and to their soon-to-be alma mater. You see, if you really love CU Boulder, transform CU Boulder. You know, I mean, again, I give a lot of those kinds of lectures and say, listen, we have the Black Lives Matter movement going on all around us. Let's bring it to Boulder. Let's bring it to CU Boulder. Let's stop. Let's make sure. Let's get out of the colored section. Let's break free. It's time for us to put into play institutional transformation. And the more we did that, the students, the students started a petition. They got over, if I'm correct, at this point, 1,700 signatures. Now, you and I both know there's only 932 black students.
Yes.
So that means there's a lot of folks who they're not African, not African American.
Allies, yeah.
They're allies,
Yeah.
are committed, authentic allies.
Yeah.
They know that their education is suffering as well because they're not being exposed
Yeah.
to the second largest human group on the face of the earth, are African people. There are 2.3 billion African people, second largest human group, and you can come through here and be here 4 years and not take a single class in African studies, African American,
Yeah.
not even have a black professor.
Right.
I mean, something is wrong with this.
Yeah.
Compared to our peers at other public institutions, that's a very curious. So the students started the petition. I had a guest essay in the Daily Camera that sparked a lot of controversy. I got into some trouble. I'm gonna leave that alone. So we all agreed to do what we can to contribute to the establishment of this center. And the fact that they did that and that they use social media. They use cyber politics. They use internet activism to raise awareness. They even had one of the founders of BLM tweeting that folks around the country should sign this petition, right?
Yeah.
And as you know, we brought the founders to the campus last year. And all of this, we're building up the momentum for this center. It's also showing how much power the students actually have. I'm very big on reminding the students of their agency.
Yeah.
I remind the students that you must be an active agent in your own education. Please do not think that some university taught me half of the stuff. I had to be like my idol Frederick Douglass and practice self-education.
Right.
I had to be like Ida B. Wells and Anna Julia Cooper and Malcolm X.
Yeah.
Right? Folks that really have long traditions of self-education, which is a part of African-American intellectual culture, by the way. Because you're not gonna learn a lot of this stuff in the classroom. You're gonna learn it in the library. You're gonna learn it in the community center. You're gonna learn it in the mosque, in the church, in the synagogue, in the spiritual temple. Rescue me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And so part of it is that was the synergy.
The fellowship, the coming together.
You better say it. The fellowship.
The fellowship.
The fellowship, the camaraderie that I developed. And when we got together to have those meetings, those planning meetings for the cause, I'm Brother Raylan. I'm Brother Rabaka.
Yes.
So I have an equal say. And if we're going to vote on something, when we're going to go to the provost, or we're going to write a letter to the chancellor, or reach out to the dean, or to Odyssey, or whatever it's going to do, we all have an equal vote. So that was the activist.
Yeah.
person in me that was trying to model for them, this is how you get things done. The problem is, I'm teaching them direct action tactics and political pressure. The students just cut to the chase and just say, well, let's just take over the chancellor's office and everything. Let's just go straight to the provost's office and just chain ourselves to his door and all of this kind of stuff. And I said, well, now listen, I like Russ a lot. Now he ain't gonna go for that now, so I don't want to get y'all in trouble. You know, I got tenure, so I'm good. I want to make sure that y'all are taken care of. And so for me, I have been reinvigorated. I think I may have suffered a small period of intellectual depression being here in Boulder and feeling isolated. I've confided in you. And I've told you this off the record that you know, I'm on the board of most of the major journals in my field. And when the new issues, the new hot article come out, there's nobody to read it with. There's no, and some of my white colleagues, they got so many people that they can have intellectual exchanges with and create a unique intellectual culture at CU Boulder. But I'm in the coffee shop sipping that green tea by myself and reading it. And after doing that for 15 years, it is so difficult. So this center then is also about building an intellectual community.
And you talk about it as brotherhood and
sisterhood. Absolutely. And also want to make sure that I'm including non-binary folk who are very much a part of BLM and they are very much a part of this center. And they've taught me so much, if I can be perfectly honest with you. And so they have sort of just like amplified my conception of Black sexuality. Is all of the Black queer, Black trans, Black gender non-conforming folk who have schooled me, who have helped me up my game, who have helped me to be a better human being, a better professor, a better researcher, a better writer, a better poet. And to do this with the students, I think that you can see that this is also the history and the history of our field. This is how Black studies started in the late 60s. When we talk about Black studies, we're talking about arguably the only academic discipline that was started by students. I mean, this is people don't know the history of African American studies. When it started as Black studies, right? In 1967, 1968, it was the students with allies, though. They had a lot of Asian American allies. They had a lot of Latinx allies. They had a lot of indigenous allies, and they had some white allies. Come on,
of course.
Right? Students for a Democratic Society. They was right there with them on the Berkeley campus and at San Francisco State. And so, with allies, the students created a discipline. That just blows my mind. And so I thought, it's been 15 years and I need to strike the iron while it's hot. I'm fixing to make this happen during the BLM period. They will know, Nabil, that we are a part of a generation of professors and students at CU Boulder. We took Black Lives Matter very seriously. We transformed this institution that we love so much. And if I criticize CU Boulder, it's only because I love it. See, it's a love, it's constructive. We could be better. They talk about be Boulder, be better. I think Boulder could be better. I think CU Boulder could be better, but check this out. I had a talk with Phil DiStefano, our chancellor. I had a talk with the provost, Russell Moore. These are both my colleagues. And I went to both of them and said, please understand that I'm not simply coming to you to identify a problem. In the tradition of W.E.B. Du Bois, if I say his name, you know I'm serious. In the tradition of my intellectual idol, I've identified a problem, and I have a moral responsibility to also offer up a solution. The cause, the Center for African and African American Studies will help this campus with recruitment. It will help this campus with retention. It'll help this campus with building a permanent community. I'm talking about building Black culture and Black community on this campus. Nabil, have you seen that, brother?
Not yet, but I'm so happy that this is going to start.
And you're a part of it.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm so excited to be part of it.
We welcome your, we need your contribution.
Absolutely. You'll have it. I want to just talk about sort of your signature on the center, right? Because it's important. I mean, I think what you said about the students is absolutely marvelous, and I salute, sort of this spirit of bringing students into the fold and letting them also take the lead on it. Yeah, and I think that's really important. One thing that I wanted to ask you is, there seems to be something a little bit of going off script, which I like. In the sense that this is not your conventional center. This is not your conventional academic center.
No.
And you've structured this in sort of these along these three axes, if we want. Sort of there's the research, there is the performative from performance studies, and then there's student services. Right? Talk about sort of the rationale behind those three things.
I really, really appreciate that question. Such a profound question. So we have a research program, which will encompass all the things that a traditional center does. But we have an arts program. And so just in general, just if I could just put a little sticky note on it, I'm calling it the arts program because we also have a partnership now with the CU Art Museum. So it will be a visual and performing art programs. Again, with African people, it's very dynamic, and I don't want it simply to be performative. I want any intellectual, any artist, any ally to be able to make their special contribution to the cause. And so for me, it does make sense. And you can clearly see as a jazz musician, in the heat of the moment, I needed to expand my vision. And so shout out to the director of the CU Art Museum, Sandra Furman, a good colleague, sister, friend of mine. I cannot tell you how touched I have been by the sheer amount of allies who have reached out to me on the Boulder campus who said, I saw what happened to Breonna Taylor, I saw what happened to George Floyd, and I got woke. It woke me up. It changed. Something inside of me died with them. And I feel like what you're doing is trying to rebirth. I'm trying to help I talked to you about rehumanize. I'm also trying to rebirth. I feel like a little midwife up in here. And so I'm really trying to bring a whole different CU Boulder into being. But to go back, and I want to answer the question directly, research program and arts program, both visual and performing arts. So we will sponsor art exhibitions in the center and in collaboration with the CU Art Museum. I've been contacted by the Boulder Museum of Art already, the Denver Museum of, I'm just telling you, it's amazing. We will have a special concert series. Believe it or not, I got Russ and Phil, my homies, the provost and the chancellor, to give us special money for a concert series that we will be having in the cause, where we will feature the full range of African and African diaspora music. So it won't just be jazz, even though I'm a jazz musician. It will not just be jazz, and it will not simply be just hip hop. Some people think it's gonna be all rap music. No, I want the full range. I'm much broader than that. And this is what the students helped me with. The students helped me with the student services program. Now, Bill, and they deserve so much credit for it, even though, again, the other centers don't have that. That's been the real challenge of how do you get a center to do something at Boulder that no other center does. No other center combines research, arts, and student services. That is the real vision. That is the real uniqueness of this. And I've shared with you the difficulty I had of doing this. I'm not going to exploit my students. The students I didn't ask them to write one word of the proposal, which is 37 single-space pages. That would be exploitative of them. They need to get their degrees. 2 of them have already graduated from that cohort. And so I just really wanted to be sensitive and mindful of them being student leaders and what that would mean. They shared the ideas, what they wanted to see with the student services program, and I wrote a lot of them up. That's another thing that I think that we need to be really honest about, that most of the other centers had 24 to sometimes 36 people on a proposal committee. For the center proposal committees had 24 to 36 people. You're looking at the entire center proposal committee, everything. And I was doing this in the middle of a pandemic when they had murdered Breonna Taylor. They slaughtered George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery. I mean, so the kinds of trauma that I was experiencing, being able to work every day and every night, sometimes late into the night on this, listening to Billie Holiday, sing me these beautiful lullabies. It was a labor of love. I was discouraged. I've shared this with you. I was very, very discouraged at many instances. And going to that BLM class and teaching those students and seeing how much they were depending on me, to hear people in the community, particularly the Boulder County NAACP, who is partnered with the cause. They are the official community partners of the cause. They got involved. They started sending emails of encouragement, and many of them are allies. I mean, you can imagine the NAACP in Boulder. So many of these are folks who have the Black Lives Matter signs in their yard, and I've challenged them. what are you committing to this movement besides a sign?
Yeah.
You've got to do something more than just say Black Lives Matter.
Right.
It's time to really do something.
Yeah.
This is something in the Boulder community that you can contribute to.
Yeah.
The response has been transformative. I mean, the
That's-
response has been, I just
Yeah.
addressed the NAACP last night, man. I'm just telling you, I mean, this is the kind of love
This is
affair.
wonderful.
Listen, Nabil, do you
Yeah.
understand what?
Yeah.
So I say that I'm an intellectual
Yeah.
and I'm an activist
Yeah.
and I'm an artist.
Right.
And I want to be a bridge from the campus to the community even before the cause was approved.
Yeah.
The NAACP had already agreed, we're not going to we know that you're not going to quit and we're going to back you up, brother. And even they
Yeah.
said, do you want us to go and take over the chancellor? I was like, no, I don't want y'all to do that. 'Cause, you know, I really like the chancellor. You know, that's my man. And so it's just one of those kinds of things to where I had not felt that kind of community and that kind of support. Brother, you and I have talked more
Absolutely.
trying to found this
Right.
center than we
Yeah.
have. and
Right.
We've been on this campus
That's right.
together for how long, bro?
That's
I mean,
right.
I'm
Yeah.
just saying, though.
Yeah. Exactly. I think that that's the beauty of it, is that we can feel that it is a labor of love, but there is also pain behind
Absolutely.
it. There is passion behind it. There is sacrifice, and then there is risk. There is risk behind it, and
And
hopefully,
the healing.
and
This
the-
is a healing.
and the
though.
healing.
See,
right?
this
Sort of-
this
I
whole
mean,
thing is therapeutic for me.
We started with Fanon. We'll end with Fanon. Fanon is about love, right? Not about violence, as he gets wrapped up sometimes.
Mislabeled.
Yeah, mislabeled. One last question. It's hard for me to say one last question when I talk to you. But one last question is, so our college, Media, Communication, and Information, has scholars and theorists of race, of power,
Yes.
of people who are asking questions about publics, people who are asking questions about public culture, people who are asking questions also about gender and class and
Sexuality.
and many other
Religiosity.
things. Religiosity, yeah, exactly. But at the same time, some of these people, if not most of them, are also storytellers.
Yes.
They are designers. They are people who have expertise in computer and computer design and whatnot. So my question to you is that how can a college like ours, right, with its students, with its faculty, with its staff, how can they help the cause?
Wow. Thank you for asking this question. I've tried to challenge people to open themselves to the idea that we all have a contribution to make to the cause. I'm talking about to the people in the suburbs in Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah.
I'm talking to the people in the trailer parks. I'm talking to the people in the low-income housing, not just the high-rise.
Yeah, right.
I'm talking about the people that come from where I come from too. We all have a contribution to make to the cause. I believe that the students, the faculty, the staff on this campus are some of the most brilliant people I have ever met. Share the brilliance. Share your expertise. Whatever you do, offer it up.
Okay.
Right? Offer it up. I mean, we say this about hip hop all the time. You don't have to be the flyest MC. You could be an aerosol artist and do graffiti. You could be a B-girl.
Yeah.
Right? You could be a DJ. You could also be a poet, a slam artist, right? You could. There's so many different ways. Listen, bruh. One of the reasons my hip hop studies class has made it out here for so long, I try to model. I'm a professor. I offer up my classroom. That is my contribution. I'm contributing to hip hop culture by giving people a deep dive into hip hop, and I do it from an intersectional framework. So we actually do, today I just lectured on hip hop feminism.
Yeah.
We do hip hop queer studies. We do hip hop critical white studies. We look at all the white hip hop heads and how they're consuming hip hop and how some of them are anti-racist, but the problematics of listening to a music where every 30 seconds and every 45 seconds they're saying the N-word, right? With the hip hop feminism, like all of these boys and men, every 30 to 45 seconds they saying the B word and the H word.
Right.
What's up? How does that impact us? And then just to wrap it up, going back to the center. Now, Bill, I would like for this center to have some of the quality and the character that on my best days, which are not very many, I seek to embody. I'm literally attempting to bring into being an intersectional, transdisciplinary center. a center that doesn't privilege faculty over students, a center that doesn't privilege faculty over staff, a center that doesn't privilege. I mean, I'm not interested in a bunch of binary. You know, I'm not interested in. I'm trying to break that down. I'm trying to listen,
Good.
man. This center is about bringing into being a post-white supremacist world, a post-patriarchal world, a post-heterosexist world. I'm trying to bring into being a whole nother kind of world. If you haven't figured it out, I'm a critical utopianist.
Yeah.
I'm a critical optimist. I'm an Afrofuturist. This center was a part of Afrofuture. When I sat in the theater, was watching Black Panther, I was like, I'm finna make this
Here's an
center. You know what I'm saying?
idea.
Like, I'm finna make this center happen. And I want it to be high tech, and I want it to be at a level of excellence. I think too often people suffer for, you know, they accept mediocrity. One of the things that W.E.B. Du Bois wrote to Kwame Nkrumah when Kwame Nkrumah became the president of Ghana in 1957, he wrote in a letter to Kwame Nkrumah, and he says, "My dear Kwame, always remember the masses applaud mediocrity, but they respect excellence."
Well said.
Personally,
Yeah.
I'm not really, if the people like me, great, but respect African American culture. I realize I'm quirky, I'm freaky, I'm geeky, I'm eccentric, I'm idiosyncratic. I'll be the first one to put all that out there, but just come and check me in the classroom and see if I'm not putting it down and I'm not dropping signs. And come check me in the center and see when you come through the door if Fela Kuti ain't bumping, if Billie Holiday and Nina Simone ain't bumping, if that new India Arie ain't bumping. You know, like, we want to make sure to Africanize, to African Americanize what it means to have a center on the Boulder campus. And in doing that, we're going to introduce people to African and African diaspora and culture. And this is the little legacy, humble though it may be.
Wonderful.
This is the legacy I want to leave here so that when I'm gone, they will know.
Oh, they will.
Right?
Oh,
That
they
we
will.
were here and that Black Lives Mattered on the Boulder campus. I am proud that we actually have a monument. We've memorialized George Floyd. We've memorialized Breonna Taylor and Sandra Bland. This institution, we are building an institution.
Yes.
They will know how we felt about the situation here. And this is one of the highlights of my career, to lead this cause, to lead this charge, for people to rally around something that is so important. I am humbled, if I can be perfectly honest with you.
And we are better for it. We are better for it, Rayland. You know, Sylvia Wynter used to say,
Another one of my intellectual idols, by the way. I'm a straight fanboy.
I wanted to end with this because I think, I'm sure that you know it, but you will like this, because she used to say that I would like to sound in theory the way Aretha Franklin sounded in songs. And you do sound like Aretha Franklin in theory, in writing.
One of my musical idols.
There we go. And I just wanted to salute that, because there is something to be said about, you know, performing what we write and how we think, as opposed to just putting word on paper. You know, what you write is great, but what you do and what you've done with the cause is greater.
Thank you.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope we can continue to
Absolutely.
collaborate.
We will.
I'm confident that CMCI would be an ally in now and in the future.
Thank you.
So hopefully we'll be able to make that a reality.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Wow, that was a thrill for me. And it was, I think, an honor and a privilege for the campus and for CMCI to be able to host you for this. And I just want to thank both of you for such a great conversation. And I want to tell the audience that there actually was, in order for it to be a more manageable session for us to have Q&A plus the conversation, we had to leave almost a half an hour out. And that was the painful experience that Nabil had to go through, was to figure out what to cut. I said, I'm not going to do it. You do it. But we have the full hour and a half recording, and we plan to make that available. I have a feeling it's going to be something that a lot of people view. I think it's going to be available on YouTube. I have some questions we have some questions from our audience, and I'll start with this one. Psychological healing for Black people requires Black psychological theories and practices. Are Black psychologists or culturally trained psychologists involved in providing therapy?
Yes, absolutely. Again, as I stated in the documentary, that we're going to be partnering with the Renee Crown Institute here on the campus. And I'm so delighted to let you all know that they have a brand new postdoc, Dr. Keisha Harris, and we have been dialoguing, and Dr. Harris will be heading up one of the initiatives coming out of the cause, which is going to be called Black Mental Health Matters. And so we have a mental health and wellness program, a Black mental health and wellness program coming out of the Center for African and African American Studies. Dr. Harris, you all can see Dr. Harris's information on the Crown website. Great question. Thank you.
Okay, here we have a question that I think you could have some fun with. In the first part of the video, you drew a distinction between academics and intellectuals. Could you elaborate on that distinction?
Absolutely. As I said, that I'm so honored to be in a field, arguably one of the only academic disciplines founded by students, which started as Black Studies in the late 1960s. And we were trained that as a so-called Black Studies scholar or student, our job is to synthesize knowledge coming from the community with knowledge coming from the campus, that we don't privilege academic philosophy over folk philosophy. So right now, most of y'all probably already know my grandmother, she's 94 years old. I'm the primary caregiver, and my grandmother only went to the 3rd grade. I'm the first person in my family to ever go to a college or a university. And my mother and my grandmothers, they sacrificed everything so that I could be here. And they are the wisest, the smartest, the most, Antonio Gramsci talks about organic intellectuals. That's my grandmom in them. That's my mama in them. And this center is a monument to my mother and my grandmothers, because I've never forgotten where I came from and how hard they worked to allow me to be here with you all today. And so an academic, they quarantine their work to the academy. Their work oftentimes does not have a life outside of the academy. And one of the things that Nabil and I joke about is that I probably lecture more in the community than I do on the CU Boulder campus. Now, this is where I'm not saying this is my day job, so don't get me fired. It's not, it's more than a day job to me. It means the world to me, but I'm an organic intellectual. I love so much. I think this is why, as a scholar, hip hop has meant so much to me. Most people don't realize in hip hop culture, we have what's called freestyling. We have what's called a cipher circle. That's literally where we're exchanging knowledge and everything. And so I'm interested in intellectual spaces that are not academically recognized, and they have not been academically colonized. And so again, academics, they can't rock these community centers. They can't go out into the Black churches. They can't go to the mosques and the synagogues, and they can't go to Naropa University and the Buddhist temple and the Shambhala Center. I rocked all of them, right? And I think that's an intellectual, right? An intellectual. Listen, Andrew, I'm gonna give you an example. My intellectual idol, his name is William Edward Burghardt Du Bois. Du Bois inaugurated empirical social scientific research, sociology in the United States of America. Correct? You can just nod your head for me, sir. Yes, this is a rhetorical question. I know all the people that come can appreciate this. So Du Bois inaugurates sociology, American sociology. The same Du Bois, on February the 12th, 1909, founds the NAACP, the greatest civil rights organization in the history of this nation. That's an intellectual and an activist. And even though Du Bois was a tenured professor at Atlanta University, wow, his work had a life well beyond the 36 years he served on the faculty at Atlanta University. Andrew, if y'all haven't figured it out, I'm living in the shadow of Du Bois. I'm a poor substitute. I couldn't shine the guy's shoes, but I'm going to try. Mike out.
Thank you so much for that. And I did have a question about being a public intellectual. A question of my own, and I don't want to take any wind. I don't want to take much time from our other questions, but if you could just say a few words about the risks of, because Nabil and I co-taught a course on public scholarship, and we spent some time thinking about and talking about with our students the risks of being a public scholar. And I was wondering how that looked from your vantage point.
Thank you so much for this question. I'm going to try not to re-traumatize myself, and I say this in all seriousness. Being a public intellectual here, and I think that, Andrew, we need to be honest, being a Black public intellectual is different than just being a public intellectual because of white supremacy, because of this racial hierarchy, because there's some people in this society who still are operating as though, people didn't fight the Civil War, right? They act like they've never heard of Juneteenth or something. We still in the colored section, but I'm going to stop. I've been traumatized by the sheer amount of hate mail, physical mail, that I get in my department. Is sad because I'm very frightened for the staff. The emails that say that folks are going to, I got one recently said they were going to lynch, kill, and then castrate me. Now I thought if you kill me, you might not need to castrate me, but some people ain't thinking right. But this is all happening at CU Boulder. Most people don't realize it. And so I think that is part of the problematic of my work having a life beyond the campus, and even on the campus, some tricky stuff that has happened to me over the years. But my grandmother and my mother, and I hope my mother's watching right now, unfortunately, but it's really, my loved ones are terrified of me being out here. My mother and them would prefer for me to my mother just say, baby, just come on home. You don't have to do that anymore. But I think those kinds of experiences, Andrew, I don't really hear very many of my white colleagues who've had the harrowing experience that go beyond racial microaggressions. This is actually threats of racial violence. If you're going to say that you're going to lynch an African American, you're going to kill him, and then you're going to castrate him too. I mean, this is on the Boulder campus. And so also, Andrew, this is where I'm so passionate about this center, because I'll have a sense of community. Right. And the folks that come there, they're obviously going to be allies, right? They're going to be committed anti-racist allies. Those are the people I really want to build things up with in Boulder. So I've experienced a great deal of sadness. I've experienced a great deal of sorrow. But today, this is one of those magical moments where I can celebrate in Boulder, at CU Boulder, with some of my progressive colleagues. And I'm honored to be here today.
Well, we are and want to be in your community.
You are. As of right now, brother, you're part of the beloved community. Welcome to Rayland, my own little world. My mother says she knew I was gonna make me a world. I'm referencing one of my favorite poems by Langston Hughes, which is called "I'll Make Me a World." And my mother, being such a huge fan of Langston Hughes, look at what she named her baby, Rayland. Wow, I'm trying to create a peaceful world. That's what my name means.
Thank you. Next question. Dr. Rabaka, I'm very touched by the way you shared turning your suffering and pain into healing. It sounds like the cause of your center will offer opportunities to support students and community with healing. And I was wondering if you could speak to this more. I'm interested in how we can further bring from the margins to the center the lived experiences of trauma in our communities to the Academy.
Again, I want to shout out my colleagues, the director of the Crown Institute, Dr. Sona Demijian. Sona is absolutely incredible. Sona has been a huge support of mine, but as you all know, Sona is a endowed professor in psychology. So I've been really rocking with and trying to create an infrastructure, because most people don't realize a lot of times when African students, African Caribbean, African American, Black students experience racial trauma, they come directly to me. Even though we got Office of Victim Assistance, we got counseling psychological services, they come to me. When they can't make rent, they come to me. When they can't get their textbooks, they come to me. All I'm trying to do is get CU Boulder to give me the resources so that we can take this to the next level and to make sure that all of our students have this incredible experience that we know that we can give them out here. That's really a part of this. But in terms of how we're going to be working together, a lot of that is going to be under the guise of our Black mental health and wellness program at the cause. And we are just now sort of setting up the infrastructure for that. So if they would check back with us in the spring when we actually can hire some staff, we have not yet even hired staff, if I can let the cat out the bag yet. So you're looking at a one-person center still. I'm telling on them. So this is the Black tax where you have a one, but not be your, you turn on your mic, man. Come on, turn on your camera and give me an amen. But I'm still a one-person center. We're in the process of hiring staff. And so this is the Black tax where I'm doing a double and triple duty. I'm not only teaching this large hip hop class, I'm not only writing all these books and articles, but I'm a one-person center still, and we need some help. So that's where we're going to really welcome help. But I am in the process of hiring staff. So I want to be very, very clear. But the staff may not start until next semester. And that's where we're going to really be able to tease out and flesh out exactly what the Black mental health and wellness program will look like.
Okay, so I want to make a quick comment to our audience. I know that it's now at the scheduled stop time, but we have a couple more questions. And for those of you who want to stick around, I think we're planning to just go maybe another 10 minutes, if that's okay with you, Raylan and Nabil.
Absolutely.
And audience members, don't feel you're rude if you have to get onto your next commitment. But I thought it'd be nice. Say what?
Can you say thank you for coming? You know, this is African American. Thank you. Thank you so much for showing up. Thank you for taking your time. Thank you for spending a little bit of your day with us. And when we get the cars up and running and have a grand opening, fall 2022, you are all warmly invited. In Kiswahili, we say karibu. That means we're giving you a warm welcome. We're telling you that you and your family and your friends have found yourself in a peaceful place.
Can't wait for that. Okay, so this is, I haven't been identifying people by name, mainly because I wasn't sure if they wanted to be identified, but I'm going to take the liberty with this one because it's my colleague in CMCI, Professor Kay Weaver. And she said, please tell Raylan how lucky we are to have him at CU and that we are keen to support what the center does and to work with the center and get our students in there and interacting with the center and learning from and working with it and spreading the word. So that's a comment, not a question, but feel free to respond.
Andrew, could you please give me or give Professor Wheeler my information and we need to have some Zoom. We need to have some green tea over Zoom. Something I want to, this is what I mean, that this attempting to create this center beyond the trials and the tribulations, if I can sound like Harriet Tubman, I want to also focus on the triumph. The triumph is right now, we're able to reach out and identify authentic folks who are committed to progressive causes, who are going to move beyond liberalism and neoliberalism, who are really progressive, like really committed. And these are the folks that I want to meet with. Again, I've been out here in intellectual isolation and cultural alienation. I want to build a community like Howard Thurman did, right? It's interfaith and interracial. It's multilingual, right? This is what I'm trying to do. This is what the cause is about. And could you please give our colleague, my new colleague right now, I'm shouting you out. My new colleague, my information is just Rabaka, RABAKA at colorado.edu. Right. And for all the hate mail too, we got people on it and they're gonna find you. Don't worry about it. We got sophisticated technology. They're gonna come get you one day. Don't you worry about that. That's okay. But no, seriously though, I'm uplifted. This is very inspiring.
All right, Kay, you heard that. Okay, next, as a student in information science interested in how Black people create and appropriate technology to survive and thrive, how can my research intersect with that of the center?
Wow. I would love for you to come and give us a workshop on the African diasporas and African people's relationship to technology. And in fact, being a descendant of Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass, there was a 250-year period where African Americans were the technology, the major technology, the most innovative technology in the United States of America. So it doesn't shock me that my students have very unique relationships with all of this technology then. I mean, what if that's just hardwired? At this point, it's kind of hardwired. I mean, what we say, I mean, we call it the African Americanization of the Sony Walkman or the CD player or the boom box or 8-track. I might be dating myself, or 8 tracks, right? You know, or the cassette player, how we were like, we would record the hip hop mix shows that would take place late at night and just mix them up later. I think that we have a fascinating relationship to technology, even more than that. Technology in the global South. It's that term means something very different for those of us from the global South. That's a fascinating. And then all the ways in which the technology and the knowledge, the epistemology from the global South gets co-opted by the global North, right? And so we need your work. I welcome you in the cause. Everybody has a contribution to make to the cause. Dean Burgin, can you hear the slogan? I keep hitting y'all with the slogan of the cause. Everybody has a contribution to make to the cause. And I hope you tell them that your colleague, you know, loves, I mean, as soon as you say, listen, Nabil, as soon as they say the Center for African and African American Studies, also colloquially called the cause, and the slogan is everybody has a contribution to make to the cause. I need to add that to the website.
Okay, so that actually ends the questions, but we've got 2 beautiful comments for you from people who posted, so I want to share those as well. This is Ruth W. Not a question.
Wait, that's Ruth, one of the founders, I believe, of the cause. Ruth Michael, one of my students who is studying in Latin America right now, studying abroad. What's up, Ruthie?
Not a question, but what a privilege it is to work with you, Dr. Rabaka, and my siblings on our love project for our transformative community, for the center cause. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Ruth, I love your little round head. Be careful over there and make it back safely. You know your work study job in the brand new center is waiting on you, spring 2022. Love you.
And one more, not a question, simply a big thank you. I have so much admiration for Raylan.
Wow. You know what? Nabil, come on, turn your mic on, brother. I mean, come on, say something to us.
Come on,
I mean, I'm sorry, though.
I am
You're
just
my
the
partner in crime.
I am just the messenger, Raylan. I was the messenger here.
Oh man, you was right there with me. You was egging me on. You was it was like John Coltrane and Miles Davis, Billie Holiday and Lester Young.
There you go. There you go. I'm just so happy that everybody got to see this and witness just how wonderful and inspiring you are, and you know, just generous. And I'm so happy that a lot of people tuned in tonight. And thank you again to CMCI team for making this a reality. And we will follow up, Raylan, and we will actually come and work with you. So that is a promise that we're making.
Now, Bill, wait,
Yeah.
we have the dean on here, my beloved dean. Can we have a follow-up next year? Can we revisit this in real time when the center actually opens? Can we have a special CMCI?
Let's do it.
Transdisciplinary.
Answer is yes, of course. And thank
I don't
you
have to sell it
again.
to you.
Thank you so much. I just have to tell you again how inspiring it's been to spend the evening with you. Thanks to Nabil for this spectacular conversation between the two of you. Is just captivating, and you've inspired us to be better. And I also want to just call out your mom and your grandmother. Thank you for talking about them, and so grateful for their support for you and bringing you to this place to help us change and make this world better. So thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you for allowing me to be on the graduate faculty of CMCI. I share so many of y'all students. They are my students. I feel like, again, I know I'm going to get in trouble with Dean Jim White for saying this, but I feel like CMCI is my second home. Some of y'all know I'm on the grad faculty, School of Ed, College of Music, the whole nine. But literally, I'm trying to model the kind of transdisciplinarity and the kind of intersectionality that, again, a lot of times people talk about this in Boulder, and it is such an honor to see the dean on here rocking right with us with your cool leather jacket on. Look like you, okay, you better work that. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, it's just so beautiful. This is precisely, I think, what the cause is about, if I can be honest with you all as well, because again, we're going to have that dimension that it's always going to be like making sure that we're branching out into different disciplines, studying different cultures. I mean, this is a snapshot of what we want the center to do.
And breaking
Right?
bread, Rayland, right? Breaking
Oh,
bread.
we got to eat. I don't drink anything, but I drink green tea. Right? I think
Same
Jamba
here.
Juice is
Same
the
here.
strongest. Jamba Juice is the strongest thing I drink. You know, that's what my mother keeps saying.
Well, thank you so much. I almost don't want to bring it to an end, but the attendance is still pretty strong here at the end. Thank you very much. Beautiful, beautiful discussion.
Before I go, can I shout out Emily and Ben and is it Melinda? I mean, there's so many of the folks who are behind the scenes. I would not be who I am if I did not do this, but I really respect behind the scenes folk, right? And so I just want to say, if y'all see me shining, it's really because of all of the folks behind those cameras, audio engineers, all the people who made this happen. I want you to know, Rebecca, love your little round head. In fact, I end with Bob Marley, one love. Right, let's get together and feel all right.
All right.
I'll take care, okay?
Have a great evening, everyone.
Okay,
Thank
now,
you
take
all.
care.
Thank
Peace.
you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.